So we had, Annabelle did a talk on Saturday for a lot of TTOC students, and that kind of opened up a lot of interest. Rene is going to go through a little bit more. We use two main things in Joomla. Lots of people use different things, but the two main ones that we're trying to put into the documentation are PHP Studio, and PHP Studio actually give us, although it's a costing software, we get licenses from them for those that are actually doing a lot of work on the core. But Visual Studio Code is definitely the new kid on the block, and a lot of people are interested in it. I've been playing with it. It's very, Gary keeps saying it's very lightweight, and it is. So I'm really interested in learning more about it, and Rene's going to do us a talk through basically the setup. Over to you.
Yes. Thanks very much. Last Saturday we had a small talk about Annabelle did a presentation on Visual Studio Code, and I really liked it. And we talked about Philip and I talked about if I could do a small session as well. Can everybody see the introduction slide here? Yes.
Yes, we see it. We see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. I put together a small program. I do a short introduction about me. Talk about some local development setup options. How I set up my Visual Studio Code. I'll show you how I do debugging PHP code in Visual Studio Code. How I create snippets and some additional tools that I use. The slides are online. I'll give you a link afterwards where you can see everything. I've got a lot of links in the slides, so you can go to every page that I mention here. You can go to that as well. And I've also got a list of the extensions that I use and how I've set them up and how my settings are, so you can reproduce everything in your own environment. Many Joomla developers use PHP Storm as an IDE. And to me, PHP Storm is a bit intimidating. I've got it and I use it sometimes, but I'm just quicker and handier in Visual Studio Code. There are many other good code editors like Sublime Text, Atom, Notepad++ for Windows users, and of course Visual Studio Code. Before I used Visual Studio Code, I used Sublime Text. Before that, I used Coda, and before that, I used BBEdit. Maybe some of you know that. And I use Visual Studio Code since 2017. It came out in 2016. My name is René Krijveld. I work full-time as a Joomla developer for Destiny. It's a communication service provider in the Netherlands. We mainly do mobile phones, that sort of things, but we also have a small development department where we do Joomla and where we do .NET. I discovered Mambo in 2003, moved to Joomla in 2005, and I'm one of the co-organizers of the Joomla user group Eindhoven in the south of the Netherlands. That's where I live. And I'm a regular speaker for the Dutch Joomla Days, Joomla user groups, and for J and Beyond. To run Joomla, obviously, you need a local Apache MySQL PHP stack. You need to install a database management tool to create and manage your databases. You need to install Xdebug if you want to debug PHP code. And you need to use a code editor or an IDE like PHP Storm. I'll briefly go over AMP stacks for Windows. You can read them here. I'm not going to go too much into them. Links are here to guide you to where you can download information, look other things up. I've got the same list for Mac OS, and I've got the same list for Linux environments.
Can I just say, we've had all the Google student Summer of Code students coming. We've had over 110 so far, and I was absolutely stunned. Literally 99% are using Windows. We've had like 2 or 3 Linux users and 1 or 2 Mac users, and the rest are all Windows. Really shifted. So do Windows. Yeah.
Well, WAMP server is one of the solutions that's used very much on Windows systems, but there's also a pretty good MAMP version available. MAMP was originally built for Mac, but it's also available on Windows now. And the colleagues that I work with within my company who work on Windows use MAMP for Windows, which is pretty good usable. It's not free, or there's a free download. But if you want to use everything like Xdebug and that sort of things, you need to buy the licensed version. Personally, I work with a homebrew-based setup. I've got everything online where you can do the installation, how I set up. Roland helped me improving this. This is a really nice setup. It's pretty fast and it's really stable, but you need to you needn't be worried to do some hand-on tools on the terminal. And you need some database management tool. I know of two that run in a browser. That's PHPMyAdmin and Adminer, but there are also quite a few which are real applications like MySQL Workbench, HeidiSQL for Windows, SQL Pro for Mac. dbeaver is available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So there are many tools available. You of course need Xdebug to be able to debug PHP code. It's a debugger and profiler. You can get it at https://xdebug.org. You can upload the output of PHP info, and then it'll tell you exactly what version you need to be running on your local machine. There are two major versions available, and the main difference is by default, version 2.x runs on port 9000, and version 3.x runs by default on port 9003, and you need to specify the port number in your php.ini. What I always do, whether I use version 2 or 3, I always set the port to port 9000, because that's the default that the debug plugin the Xdebug plugin for Visual Studio Code uses. So this is an example setup for Xdebug version 2.x. And make sure you set the proper path to the debug file. And for version 3.x, I also set the port to 9000. So then it's the same as in the 2.x version, and it'll always work automatically. Right, Visual Studio Code. Yes?
I just want to say that also for Xdebug 3, the parameter names have changed.
Yes, that's also true. These are the parameters you can use for version 2.x. And if you see the parameters in 3.x have changed. There's quite some documentation on the Xdebug website about this. Install, and you can probably see.
The old names will still run, but they will show you a notice.
Okay.
If I work.
So, in my experience, when you use these settings for free, it'll run just immediately in Visual Studio Code. So I'll show you later on. I'll show how you do debugging. Visual Studio Code. It's a code editor built by Microsoft.
Ik ben bang dat ik dat niet kan.
Right. Thank you. It was publicly released in 2016. It's multi-platform. It's available for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it's a multiple languages supported editor. You can edit C++ code, C#, CSS. There are many languages available. Git is built inside VS Code, and it's highly extendable through extensions. You can download it from code.visualstudio.com. And I'm running on a Mac here, so it'll offer me a Mac download, but you can download other versions as well for Mac, for Windows, and for Linux. There are many online resources. There's a documentation part on the Joomla site about Visual Studio Code, where a lot of extensions are explained. There are setup options explained. If you go to YouTube and search for Visual Studio Code, there are many videos available with explanations how to set up Visual Studio Code, what extensions to use, how to use GitHub. There are really much good videos available. And if you really want to do some in-depth studying, for example, through Udemy, Udemy offers quite a lot courses on Visual Studio Code. And well, Udemy is pretty cheap, and most of these courses are really good. There are cheat sheets available with the keyboard commands that you can use. These are available for Windows, for Mac, and for Linux. And this is a part of the macOS cheat sheet. It'll give you the commands how to do things inside of Visual Studio Code. How did I set up Visual Studio Code? I did a basic setup. I installed extensions, and I'll show you how to debug and how to do snippets. After a basic installation, just download it and install it. I always install an extra font. I installed the Veracode font, which is I think it's a really great font for programmers because it's got font ligatures, which means these characters are linked together. I can show you how that works. If I say dollar question, then type 2 is signs, these are linked together, or is, and then the greater than sign, you get these nice font ligatures that's built inside the font. I also installed a color theme. I like working in a dark theme, and the Cobalt 2 theme, I like that very much. This is how it looks like. If I open up some code, this is what it looks like. But there are many color themes available. You can set up the color theme by choosing them inside the editor, and there are so many options available. And if you want extra ones through the extensions, you can install other color themes. Visual Studio Code is highly extendable. There's a marketplace where you can find and search for extensions. There are extensions for just about anything. You can run an FTP client inside Visual Studio Code. You can run a MySQL client inside Visual Studio Code. And for the tools that I use, I've gathered some extensions that I use daily. Installation is quite simple. You press Shift Command X on a Mac or Control Shift X on Windows. And then you go to you can search for extensions. For example, MySQL. And then you can see a database client for VS Code, MySQL management tool. Click on the install button and the extension gets installed. It's really simple.
Rene?
Yes?
Can we fire off questions if we have them?
Yeah, sure, please do.
Okay, so one of the big things that I have a problem with on PHP Storm, which I've been using for quite some time, is all the different folder structures that I need to implement a project. So say, for example, on a standard Joomla project where all I've done is develop on the, say, for example, overrides, so on the template, and I've done nothing else, but I want to maintain some kind of idea of what I've done. How would you implement a Joomla install, a blank Joomla install as part of your Visual Studio Code setup? And then, for example, let's say, for example, you did some extra development where you created a module for a client,
yeah,
and you wanted to track the development of the module separately from the project, but also have it available within the project.
Well, you can track changes, of course, with Git. But I don't do tracking of individual extensions that I write inside Visual Studio Code. You can do tracking from the root of the site. You can go to Git here and then initialize repository, but then it'll track changes. But you would have to, well, I think you would have to create a file that ignores everything else. So
yeah, I mean, one of the nice things in PHP Storm is I can create. I mean, it takes some time, but I can create a lot of ignore folders and so on, so that I can set up a structure within a project where I'm only looking at a module kind of download from the site, rather than the whole Joomla installation.
Rene, I can answer some of these questions that Gary's got.
yeah, fine.
If that's all right. So one of the things that you can do is VS Code, because I've been using it quite a lot, is you can set up workspaces. And in those workspaces, you can create linked folders. So you don't have to have your whole installation in your workspace. You can pick the folders that you want to use and create a workspace from them. The other thing that you can do, especially if you're using Windows, and it's one of the things that I do quite a lot, is I create myself workspace folders for my projects, and
Yeah.
then you use the Windows make link commands to create junctions and symlinks, and then you just
Right.
reference your. So instead of opening up your whole Joomla install, so you can do your Joomla install, with whatever you want. You can point, the whole thing to the Joomla folder if you like, or
Yeah.
you just point it to your workspace folder. And if you've set it up with junctions and symlinks, then that just keeps all your files that you're working on
All in the
together
same place.
in the same place without you having to navigate the whole structure. But if you've got a workspace set up like Rene's got here, you could. So one of the things I tend to do is have a workspace folder with just the links to the bits that I use quite regularly, and then you add in a root Joomla folder as well. So then I can navigate from that menu on the left. I can have my workspace, and then if I need to dip into check other items or other things, I can just drop into. So if you look, you can add folder to workspace and that kind of thing. So it is really flexible.
Right,
It's
right.
really positive.
Yeah.
And a lot of my team who've previously been using Visual Studio, basically dumping Visual Studio for VS Code because it is so extensible, so open, and across platforms. So whether you're using Mac or Windows, you've got the same sort of platform there. Sorry to,
Yeah.
to interrupt there,
No,
Ren.
Kieran, thank you. That was really
Great.
good. Really good.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I know it's a little bit of a technical question, but I do struggle with the. I don't want to load a whole Joomla thing in because, sometimes I just want to like track the changes in a certain template, but then I also want to get access to other parts of it within that project. So this is.
Yeah, I mean, just so that people know, because I know there's one or two, very few people outside of Glip, apart from Gary. So in Glip, we've created two channels. One is PHP Storm, and one is Visual Studio Code. I'm trying to put in any things that are really helpful for those two environments inside those. And really try and encourage people to contribute. So what you've just been saying, Kieran, would be fantastic. I mean, I don't know if you're in Glip, but if you are, to pop into the Visual Studio Code channel or just ping me when you're in there, and then to have this sort of thing written out. I'm just trying to tool everybody up, because one of the biggest things that the students are having to kind of come to grips with is they can't just open Notepad anymore. It's not acceptable. There's so much they have to learn. So to actually have a set route through for PHP Storm or Visual Studio Code that they know will work will just speed up the development for Joomla so much more.
Yeah, sure. I did manage to get into there. It did take me a few attempts and a couple of different tries. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, part of my workflow, which I hadn't really spotted until now, is like in my FTP client, I have Sublime Text as my editor of choice in files that I edit through FTP. So when I go into FTP, I'll double click on a file, it'll open up Sublime Text while I'll be working in PHP Storm. And I'm suddenly realizing that the disparity of all of this, the disconnect between all the different tools that I'm using, which aren't working together.
Yeah.
Gary, why not use PHP Storm as your FTP client?
Yeah, because opening up a file in PHP Storm, if it's not open, takes about 20 minutes on my computer.
Oh.
Maybe not 20 minutes, but at least 2 or 3 minutes. It's not the lightest of apps.
Yeah. So that's another good thing, that VS Code does have lots of FTP clients that are quite powerful in the extensions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Rene's just showing you. So simple FTP and FTP sync's pretty good, actually. We've used the FTP sync one because it does keep a version on your local and sync it up to a remote, so it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. There's something I like about if I use FileZilla for my FTP. Update. You know, it's one of those things that I'm just so used to now. Like changing that,
Yeah,
and doing it all through Visual Studio Code would be something about.
it takes a lot. It takes a lot once you're used to files. There's something nice about dragging your file and going, that is now dropped.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
can be
I don't want
confident
to
with
break
it.
up a happy marriage.
And most of the time, you know, that you come across these things at a time when you're already under pressure to deliver. So you're already
Yep.
trying to work something out. The last thing you want to do is like trying something new, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. But FileZilla, or if you're using Windows, we use WinSCP quite a lot. That's quite a nice
WinSCP,
nice,
yeah.
nice
But
client.
there's
as
no
well.
reason why I can't now use Visual Studio Code in FileZilla, because it's quite a nice light app. It doesn't take too long to open up a file.
No.
And so if I
And
then
that-
bring all my text editing into Visual Studio Code, it makes it a little bit more, the workflow a little bit more consistent.
And in the last release as well, they did release Collaborate, so you can, in theory, do real-time pair programming
Right.
as well, and collaboration in VS Code. So
Right.
Sorry, Renee. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, Renee,
go on
back on track.
detour.
All right.
Over to you.
What I want to do next is show what extension that I use practically on a daily basis. First thing I always use is bracket pair colorizer. It allows matching of brackets to be identified with colors, and I can show you how that works. For example, I can best show it inside, for example, a CSS or a LESS file. You see here that it colors matching matching brackets, and also if you use different indenting, it automatically colors the brackets that go together. So if you put extra brackets inside here, and then inside here, and then inside here, it colors them differently. So you can very easily track what brackets are belonging to what others. Right, next. Joomla snippets. Annabelle wrote a really great extension to use Joomla snippets inside Visual Studio Code. And you can access these snippets after installing it by simply typing the abbreviation. For example, let me open up a new file. And I can type J4, and then I get a suggestion for snippets. Oh, I have to save the file, of course. And then I can add a document path or input or registry. There are so many options available. So Hannibal did a really great job writing an extension to use Joomla abbreviations. Next one is that I use a lot. It's Markdown Preview Enhanced. It'll give you a preview of Markdown content. I can show that. I've got a mark file here, and this is mark file, but I can also see what it looks like in a preview mode, and that works for practically every file. It has to be a markdown file, but you can simply preview it in the way what it looks like. For example, if you upload it to GitHub or something. Next one is PHP Debug, which is the adapter between VS Code and Xdebug. It's just a matter of installing it. You just have to you select it and you install it, and then it works. I'll give a demonstration how you use it, but it's really simple. The one I use the most is PHP IntelliFence. It's got code intelligence for VS Code, more advanced than IntelliSense, which is also available for PHP. It gives you IDE-like tools inside PHP code. For example, if I've got a project here. Let me close this, and I open a file, components, network grantees. And then, for example, the controller here, you can click on a function and then you can go to the definition. So it'll take me to where the definitions is inside the Joomla code. It'll show you what stage you're in, where you are in the code. It can do code formatting. It can warn me when I've got older code inside my Joomla code. So it's really, really a great extension. There is some information available on IntelliSense. It's a tooling for any language server protocol. It's got code completion, signature help. You can go to a definition. You can find all references. You can do symbol search and diagnostics. There are some options available if you buy a license, but a license price is $12. So that's really not too expensive. PHP FMT is a PHP code formatter. It formats PHP code, so it comes close to the Joomla coding standard. I can show that as well. When I've got some code, for example, the controller here, I can select the code and then format selection. Then it automatically puts the brackets on the right line. It puts the equal signs together. So it makes the formatting pretty close to the Joomla coding standards. What you see here is that it now indents wrongly. So it's a bit, sometimes it's buggy, this tool. So I have to shut down VS Code and start it up again. And maybe most of the times when I reformat the code then, no, it's not, that goes wrong. Then it should format it correctly, but that's not working now. So, but most of the times the formatting goes correctly. Prettier is also a code formatter. I use that to format HTML, CSS, SAS or JavaScript code. Also a tool to format code. You can plug in an extension here so that you can do PHP code formatting, but I don't use that. I use PHP FMT to do the PHP formatting. Last one is XML tools, which I use for XML formatting. Joomla has a lot of XML files inside. For example, here, components, and then go to network grantees. And then I can select everything and format it. And it'll format my code much better. Here's also a config.xml, I believe. Yeah. Format it, and then, well, you don't see change because it's already optimized. But if I, for example, put everything to the left, and everything is below each other, then format it, will nicely indent the XML files. So how do I debug PHP code? You open first your code in VS Code. I have a Joomla 3 website here, and suppose that I want to debug the way the front-end block is built up. First thing I need to do is call up the debugger. And then I need to create a launch file so PHP code and Xdebug know where the code is. I can create my launch.json file inside my Joomla 3 folder. And I say I need a PHP environment. This listens for Xdebug and it listens to port 9000. On my machine here, host, info.php. You can see that I have Xdebug running, Xdebug version 302. So the port is set to 9000. Let me check that as well. here are my PHP settings. PHP 7.4, config, Xdebug IDE. That's also running at port 9000, so that's correct. And then I can save this file. Now that this is set up, I can add breakpoints. So I open the code. So the front-end block view is in components, content, views, category, and then the block.php. And then I can set a breakpoint, for example, here. So I've now set a breakpoint. And then I can go to the debugger and I say, listen for Xdebug. So debug is now listening. And if I refresh the page then, the debugger kicks in and it's now stopped at line 12. So all I needed to do is create a default launch.json file, start the debugger, and that's it. And now you can skip through the code. You can add watch variables. For example, I see results here. And I can say watch dollar results. Dollar results. And when I skip through the code, you can see there's a value added to results. And you can, it's got one element, which is empty, but you can really debug your code. When you skip through the code, you see where the cursor is in the file. And you see here, if this params get show category list. When I click then this button, which is step in 2, it'll go to the file where the get function is. So you can, well, debug your code inside VS Code. I'll let it run so that the front end is built up. So it's pretty easy to set up. This is the configuration. That's all I needed to create. Let me show you another example. Even kijken. I've got a website here which displays a list of records. If we want to debug this code, which is also running on the front end, which is network grantees, views. Oh, this is the backend. Go to the front end, network grantees, views, organizations, and this is the list. Put a breakpoint here. We don't have a configuration yet, so create a launch.json file, install it in the root of the site. It's a PHP debug setting. Save it and start debugging. And again, when we refresh the page, go into the debugger. So you see when the user is not logged in. So we've got no user here. Oh, there is a user logged in. User ID is 884. So there is a logged in user. And you can inspect values. You can do watch expressions. You can review the call stack. So it's very, very easy to debug. You can also create your own snippets in VS Code. Creating snippets is pretty simple. Let me go back to the Joomla 3 website. First, I have to stop the debugger. All right. And open the Joomla 3 site again. I'll create an empty PHP file here. So that's in the root of the site. PHP. What if I wanted? Oh, I've created in the wrong place. Doesn't matter. Snippets. First, you go to the command palette with Command Shift P and search for a snippet. I'm going to create a global snippets file, but you can also create snippets inside of your workspace. But I'm going to create a global snippets file now. And then Joomla London, that's the file name that I'm going to use for my snippets. Now I can create a snippet. First, you need to copy a code block that you want to use as a snippet. I've got an example file here. And what I'm always struggling with is how to write the correct, for example, how to write the correct jQueries. So if I want to create a snippet to select records where I select all columns. So this part of the code, I want to create a snippet for. And I copy this code. On the web, I can go to snippetgenerator.app. And there I can paste the snippet. You need to be aware of lines that start with a $. You have to escape these with a backslash. So if I look at the code, I see here $query. And also $db. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the $sign. And then with Command Shift L, I can create multiple cursors and put a backslash in front of it. So now for all the $signs, I have a backslash. So I'm going to copy the code again because I need to escape the $sign and paste this again. And I'm going to give a description for my snippet. So query all fields, all columns. And the trigger that I want to create a snippet for, I'm going to call it JQ all. This site then generates the code for inside a Joomla of a VS Code snippet. So I'm going to copy the snippet, go back to VS Code, and paste the snippet right there. All right. I made a little typo error, JQ all with 2 L's. That's what it needs to be. So now inside my PHP file, I can now type JQ-all and then tab, and it generates my snippet. So it's very easy to this way create a snippet. In my code example here, I also have a query with one column, and then you do a load result instead of a load object list. So same thing, I copy the code, go to the website, paste it, query one column, and I'm going to name this jQuery1, copy the snippet, paste it inside my snippets file.
Ik zie niets wat op.
So now we can I didn't copy it. Paste. This snippet is called JQ1. And with the same way, I can now type JQ1, and I've got a snippet for a select command with one column. So this way, it's very easy to create snippets. Yes. Additional tools that I use in my development, which are not VS Code related, but I use Prepros a lot for the students. Might be a handy tool. This compiles files, transpiles JavaScript, optimizes images, reloads browsers, and it's a free unlimited trial. You can get it through prepros.io. What this actually is a tool that you can use to compile LESS and SAS files to CSS, for example, but also optimize JavaScript, optimize images, that sort of things. I can show it to you. I've got a website with a template here. Close everything. So here is the main LESS file, site.less, and inside this file, we include other LESS files. For example, for the drop-down menu. And Prepros is monitoring all files inside my template, all LESS files. And I've said here, if site.less changes or any of the included files, it must process the LESS file and create a CSS file and also create a source map. And when I process it, it automatically generates the CSS file. But when I look at the site, for example, here you see the drop-down menu. For what if I change something inside the settings, for example? Let's make all the letters uppercase. So I'll do text transform uppercase, save it. And when I save the LESS file for the menu, Prepros detects that and automatically generates the new CSS file. And when I refresh the page then, you see that all the buttons are transferred to uppercase. So Prepros is a really great tool for that. And the version that I use is a paid version, but you can use an unlimited trial. So you can install the software and everything works. Additional tools I use is Dash or Zeal. And Dash is an API documentation browser. And with Dash, you can create documentation sets, for example, for Bootstrap 2, 3, 4, or 5, for CSS, for HTML, for Joomla. And what this does is it's complete documentation for the libraries that I've installed, but the documentation is on your own machine. It's offline. And for VS Code, there is an extension available, a Dash extension, which helps you to mark a word, and you can look that then up inside of Dash. For example, if I got code here, organizations, and I see a function here, get model, and then I can type Control H. And then it will show me the command inside my Joomla documentation. And the same goes for CSS, for HTML. Because if I go to the LESS file here.
Wat wil je versturen? Je kunt me vragen om een e-mail of een sms'je te versturen.
For example, here, site.less, and then I can say background color, Control H, and then it'll jump into the CSS documentation. For Windows, there's also a variant available, which is called Zeal. And Zeal uses the same documentation as the Dash libraries, because the documentation are provided by Dash. And that's what I said, both Dash and Zeal integrate nicely with VS Code with Control H command. My VS Code setup is online. I have a GitHub repository, and there you can see a list of the extensions that I have installed with links to them, how to install them, and also my settings file. Visual Studio Code it stores the settings in a JSON file inside VS Code, I can type command, comma, and then go to this icon. And here are the settings of my Visual Studio Code setup. And I've also put that online. And also the links to my slides. You can download a PDF file.
Can you put the link back up, please?
Yes.
In
Any
fact, could you copy that to the chat?
Yes. Presenting, right? These are my web. And this is the link to
While Renee's doing that, one thing that I use VS Code for is you can make an SSH connection directly inside VS Code to your live server. So you can actually use Visual Studio Code on your computer, but the data is on the live server, and it's as if you're working locally.
Yeah,
and you can do that with password or token as well. And I just got that working when I got chastised by Benjamin for doing it live, and I should be using Git and pushing it from my local. And Plesk allows you to do all of that. So I managed to do it all, and then I don't need to anymore. But it is really useful, really useful.
I've got on my GitHub repository here. This is on GitHub, and I've put the code on my local machine on GitHub desktop, and I can open then my local repository inside Git, inside VS Code. And for example, if I make a change here in the README, here are my settings, the things that I use in VS Code, and then save it. Git will tell me there's a change, and then I can commit that. Modified README. And now it's committed. And then I can also say, okay, push back to GitHub. So now it's pushing it back to GitHub. And when I check on GitHub then, refresh, there's the change. So you can quite easily commit changes locally and push them back to GitHub, for example.
Yeah, and that's what I was showing Gary the other day. I mentioned it and been working through with Benjamin, that Plesk allows you to use a webhook to then push that to your htdocs folder. So you can agree with the changes in GitHub. So you can go from local to Plesk and to GitHub, and from GitHub to your Plesk server and then live. So there's a continuous environment.
Yeah.
The other thing that's quite nice is the GitHub integration directly into VS Code. So you can actually review the Joomla issue queue directly in VS Code, read the comments, make comments, check out the review, the code, make sure it works, post back your results, etc., all within VS Code without ever having to leave it.
Do you show that? Can you show that?
I can't because I don't use that, but maybe Ryan can.
Too much power for one human being.
I would do, but I can't right now because I'm on my phone.
Okay.
Okay,
I can record a quick video for you later.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great.
Fantastic.
It's so easy.
Yeah, it's just knowing about these things and knowing that they are easy. Because often when you're trying to do setup, you know that you're going to read through it all and you're not going to get the setup you want. Certainly working with Gary, that's how we get.
The other thing with VS Code is that it updates every month. And like Renee, I've been using it since almost the beginning. And in fact, I'm actually using less extensions now than I was earlier on, because more and more of the functionality I was using is now part of the core.
Yeah.
That's really good to know that they're listening.
Here you can see the timeline of the changes I did in the README. So it's the Git history you see here. Another extension that's been mentioned a lot is Git Lens. I'm not using that, but
That's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Git supercharged. So what it does is effortless revision navigation, an unobtrusive current line blame. Well, I'm no Git expert, far from that. So I don't use it.
Basically, what it does is you can actually you're looking at the code in Visual Studio Code. You click on a line, let's say, and it shows you a pop-up with what was the commit message, who committed it, and you can even a link which will take you to github.com with the correct pull request, etc.
Yeah.
So you can see absolutely everything just without having to do anything. You're working along and you go, which idiot wrote that? Oh, that was me.
Yeah.
You know, or you could quickly jump to the pull request where it was committed, which I find really useful. And
Yeah.
I know other things like PHP Storm do all of that, but Visual Studio Code's just fast.
Yeah, it's really fast. If I look at the code for example, for where is my window with the Joomla site here? Hang on. Let's go here. Joomla 3. So I'm at the root of a Joomla site here, and suppose I want to look for what did we search? What did Geraint just search for? He searched for a command that was only in one place, or in one specific file inside of the Joomla code. I forgot what it was. But for example,
Disabling updates.
Say it again.
It was disabling update sites.
Yeah, and did you know the command that you said, Geraint? What was the command?
Yeah, give me a second. Give me a
Yeah.
second.
We've even got interaction between the speakers.
Oops, if I go in, no, here. Nope.
Okay, so the command is toggle update site. I'm going to copy that. I go inside here and then paste it. There it is. It's in one file, in update adapter.php. And if I click this line, it'll take me to the line where the command is. So this search is really, really fast, because it's got, I'm just in the root of my Joomla site, I type a search string and it searches incredibly fast. For example, Factory, it's got 3,153 results in 1,138 files. So that's incredibly fast. Maybe it's my machine, but I think VS Code is just lightning
I've
fast.
noticed it being very fast on searches. Very
Yeah.
impressed with that. That's one of those things. There's certain things that I do in PHP Storm, and I start to think, I should do that in Visual Studio Code because it'd be quicker.
Yeah. But you can also mass search and replace it in many files. I could change this to.
And it can be case sensitive, case matching.
Yeah. You can match case or match whole word. So that's just brilliant.
It's the match casing on the replace that has saved me so often.
That is
Any
an
other
amazing feature in general.
Sorry, what was that, Roland?
I said that the match casing and replacement in general is a very powerful and useful feature.
Yeah. Any other questions? Hi, thank you
Very
for your
good.
attention.
Yeah,
Yes.
just a really big thank you for that. That's been really, really helpful. No, it has been amazing.
I did have a question.
Oh, go on. No, no, you go.
Sorry. Renee, in creation of snippets, can you add variables into snippets? So I noticed that you were creating like 1 column and 3 column and 4 column snippet. Can you pass in, I want to create a 1 column snippet, or I want to create a 3 column snippet?
What you can do is this. Let me get back to VS Code. Where is my snippet? Command-Shift-P, snippets. You can use the snippets. Joomla London. What I can do is, for example, here is a code block to create an email, for example, inside of Joomla. So first thing I'm going to do is going to escape the $sign and copy this, and then go to that snip website. Here, snippet generator, and then copy this, paste the snippet here, and this is send email, and then I call it Jmail. What I can do then, as you know, in the email code, I've got a line here for the recipient, and I want to make this. I want the cursor to jump to this position so I can insert my own recipient, and the same goes with the subject and with the message body.
Yeah.
So what I can do then is it gives me a hint here, $1 example. So what I do here is $1, and then close this dash, and then same with the subject, $2.
Yeah.
And then here, $3. Right. Then copy the snippet. Where's my snippets file?
Joomla snippets.
That's my example code. Hang on. P snippets. Here. My code snippets. Yeah. Copy the snippet. Paste it and save. And then go to a new file. Jmail. Here it is. And the cursor jumps immediately to the first field. So I can type me at somewhere.com, and then tab. This is my new subject. And then here goes the mail body. So you can create sort of anchor points where you can tap through then.
Okay.
Is that what you need?
No, but that's useful. That's useful.
Yeah. So then I didn't understand your question.
Well, just I mean, it's I mean, you know, let's say for example, you create a snippet where you create some markup, and it's going to create 3 columns, or you create some markup and you want 2 columns. So you pass 2 columns or 3 columns. I know that you can do it just by changing, for example, the name.
Yeah, create 3 snippets, for example.
Yeah. So you could do it like that. But I was just wondering whether you could pass a variable through your snippet parameter into the actual code. Almost like coding within.
I'm not sure if that's. I'm not sure if they have that. You see, basic editing. This is a part about snippets, built-in snippets, install snippets from the marketplace, create your own snippets. it does the same. You see, that it's
Essentially,
what this
you just have to remember more names, don't you? If you want
Yeah,
different,
yeah.
lots of different things.
language scope, project scope, snippet syntax, choice. There are variables here like file number, file name, that sort of things.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's nice.
But not what you're looking for, I think. Variable transforms. This probably has to do with the file name. So I haven't looked into that, so I don't know the answer. Sorry.
Plenty of flexibility there, though.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else?
That's brilliant. No, thank you very much. That's been very, very helpful. And all the stuff that you've explained has been really helpful for the GSOC students. Roland and those that are PHP Storm enthusiasts, there's always April's Joomla London if you fancy doing a tutorial on PHP Storm. That would be really welcome, because it's all about us all learning. The more we learn, the better we can make Joomla. So I think this area is something that we can all collaborate on. You know, the Victor and Geraint, you know, they might want to keep things away from each other on their personal projects, but if we can all help each other tool up, I just think it really helps the whole community to make faster code, better quality, less bugs. Because we're not all like Victor and Brian in that we can write perfect code first time. I need debuggers, I need code sniffers, especially according to Benjamin, who laughs incessantly at my code. See, Germans can have a sense of humor because he laughs so much whenever I open up my code. But no, it's brilliant. That's really, really helpful. And that was really in depth to the level that we needed for everybody to be able to follow.
It was fun to do. Thanks very much.
No, thank you. No, that's really, you just stepped up to the challenge straight away.
It's the way we program when we're doing our thing.